Hi everyone, this is Arcadius and welcome back to Naval. Today we'll be reviewing the second set of torpedoes that came out for Ibuki. This was actually relatively, I want to say recent, but recent in the way that I haven't played many games in Ibuki since she has changed. Now originally you used to only have one set of torpedoes, and that were these. You had 8 kilometer range, 76 knots, 0.43 rounds a minute, 1.5 kilometer detectability, and 190.32% torpedo flood chance, as well as 21.5 thousand damage. And these torpedoes are plenty powerful, however they lacked a kind of good range. You kind of had to go to point blank in order to use them. However, they were quite fast and they did a ton of damage, so they were pretty much one shot, one kills. However, there also is the ability to get extended range, that being 2.8 more kilometers. But you also lose speed, you lose damage, and you lose flood chance. And I know it says the increase in detectability is a plus, however, 2.1 detectability is actually a negative. So you get only the added 2.8 kilometer range. And for that, you lose a little bit of damage, not too much, but you lose 11 knots in your speed. So you go from 76 to 65 knot torpedoes, which honestly, there's destroyers at this tier that have 65-ish knot torpedoes, so it's not the worst. But I do enjoy the fact of having the 76 knots. There's no dodging 76 knot torpedoes at the ranges you have to fire them. However, these are still an option to equip, and so we'll be taking Ibuki back out and seeing how we can do with these torpedoes, and hopefully we'll be able to use them. So let's toss her into a game and see what we can do. Alright, and here we have ourselves a game. 1 carrier, 3 battleships, and 3 cruisers. No destroyers, surprisingly. However, we do have a Malta, which will make it a pretty difficult game, because that's a really strong carrier. I do have quite a bit of anti-aircraft defense on my ship, but not really enough to go up against a carrier 1v1. Not like Worcester or Des Moines. Alright, so let's start rolling. We do have health buffs and speed buffs applied, so do keep that in mind. So Ibuki, I know I talked about her in the first video I did on her, but she really has been power creeped, I want to say. She's not as strong as she once was, and is definitely not a ship that stands out to be very good either. Compared to against all the other top tier cruisers, such as Des Moines and Worcester, Magdeburg or Brandenburg. There's also Minotaur. There's also Nevsky now too. There's just no real good reason to take this ship. If you want good AA, you would take American cruisers. If you want good speed and to an extent good torpedoes, the German cruiser, you'd also get good AA with her. And if you want concealment, rate of fire, and torpedoes again, you would go with Minotaur. And then a heavy broadside and good AA and good maneuverability, pretty decent armor, would go with Nevsky. Ibuki doesn't bring anything to the table that isn't new. And in fact, she's gotten quite worse. She used to have really fast shell velocity. And that was the main reason why I would always play her and take her into arena. And she also was able to equip dive bombers. However, she was altered, and she now has the same shell velocity, or similar shell velocity to Decal, so you don't get any update there. And she lost her dive bombers and only has fighters now, so you don't even have that capability. And torpedoes, though good, they have terrible gun arcs. Their AA defense, though powerful, is probably the weakest actually of all the top tier cruisers. And her armor is nothing special either. So there's nothing that would make a player want to play this ship, in my opinion. That doesn't mean she's a bad ship. It just means that there's no real reason to actually get her. So we are launching some armor piercing downrange, maybe trying to get a few citadels on this Minotaur. Though I don't really... Well, actually that wasn't terrible, but no citadel. The ship in the game that is most like... Well, there's not really a ship that's most like how Ibuki used to be. If anything, it might be Minotaur. But what comes to mind is actually Alnevsky, or Project 84. She is the ship that has the really good shell velocity now of 1,000 meters per second, and also her rate of fire is like twice what Ibuki's is, I would assume, or at least pretty similar. Let's see if we can actually use some torpedoes, because we're actually in a bad spot. And I'm going to widespread these because I think she's going to maneuver. So let's see what that does. We have our torpedoes on this side as well in case those miss, which it looks like they did. The only thing I can think of that she might have better, but I haven't actually looked at the stats to determine, is maybe she has pretty decent concealment. But even then, you have ships like Minotaur that have pretty, I would assume, pretty decent concealment. And they also have the ability to equip a smoke screen regardless, so you can cut down your concealment to pretty much nothing at that point as well, while you're in the smoke screen. Health, she's not going to have the most. That will probably go to Magdeburg, which is pretty much a battleship, honestly. She just doesn't have the armor of a battleship. That's her main flaw. So yeah, there's nothing that's really standing out. Even her speed. She used to be a really fast ship. But Alnevsky, or Project 84, goes almost 40 knots. So there's no real bonuses to this ship at all, unfortunately. Even her range seems pretty lackluster. So yeah, this ship has seen a lot of nerfs, and honestly, she's just not a good ship competitively anymore. She doesn't bring much to the table. But she can still do some pretty decent damage, and like I said, those torpedoes are pretty powerful, but you also have ships that, like our Minotaur, that still have 8 torpedoes to his side. Though I do think she has... Yeah, she has pretty decent torpedoes, but like I said, in order to get close enough to use them, it's questionable if that's a good game logic. And then, even then, the torpedo angles themselves are not very good. They're definitely a lot better Minotaur, and she's more effective at handling different situations. So you just have to stay in the back here and spam, which isn't terrible. And if you are able to do that, you're most of the time just going to be ignored, or at least I would think so. You don't want to bring attention to yourself if you can help it. So we're trying to work on this Malta a bit, see if we can get some citadels on her. There we go. We got at least one. But something like a Des Moines right here, yeah, you would have almost the same number of shells heading down range. Per salvo, except your rate of fire would be a lot better. And we're actually going to see if we can use our torpedoes again. I don't really think narrow spread will work, but maybe widespread, and then we'll flip around. Well, no, we'll keep the torpedoes because the rate of fire is pretty trash as well. It's almost 2-minute reload, and a 20-minute game, that is quite substantial. And we are being shot at by a dead battleship. That's fine. Alright, so we were able to get quite a bit of damage with our main guns on the Malta broadside. But that also leaves us with Yamato. So let's see what we can do against her. But as you can see, I've pretty much done nothing this entire game. Yes, I've sank 2 ships, but did that really make a difference in the game? Not really. I wasn't able to handle the carrier by any means. The only reason I was able to sink her was because she wasn't shooting me. And the only reason I was able to sink the Ibuki is because I sank her at point-blank range with torpedoes. Guns are doing steady damage, and I did get 7 citadels, but I wasn't getting the real good shots and salvos that I really need to be an effective team player. I just really think that they need to give Ibuki a purpose, if that makes sense. There's nothing that stands out about her that would make any player want to play her either competitively or even in arena or as a mission ship or just in general too. There's just so much that has changed with her, and it's kind of sad. Alright. So I know I've been talking about her this entire game and all the downsides of her. But like I said, she's not a bad ship if you really, really do like Japanese cruisers. She does keep the same ideology of fast velocity guns with powerful torpedoes and rear kiting arcs. She has decent AA to an extent that you can help defend ships, but not really defend yourself very well. Good maneuverability, good speed. Like I said, I haven't looked at concealment values at all for any cruisers, but I've been assuming she might have pretty decent concealment. But yeah, this is just how she is. She's very much like Mogami. Now, they do look almost exactly the same. The main difference is that Ibuki cannot equip the 6-inch guns at all. She can only equip the 8-inch, and she has a lot better anti-aircraft defense. Besides that, there's pretty much no difference. She might get a little bit of health, and maybe a little bit of speed. Maybe not. I'm not for sure. Alright, so let's see if we can get some last parting damage on this Yamato. She does have the island like right in my crosshair ways, so I doubt I'll be able to get much damage besides overpens, as you can see here. But she doesn't need much more, so maybe we can get a 3rd kill before the game ends. Yep, there we go. Alright, so let's see how we did. It was victory, but it was kind of a shallow victory. We didn't do much. We were still able to get 141,000 damage, 3 ships sunk, 80 torpedo hit, oh, yeah, 80 torpedo hits, that'd be nice. 80 shell hits, 2 torpedo hits, 7 aircraft shot down, 7 citadels, 1 flooding, 1 capped base, 6 defended caps, and 5 secondary hits for 5,000 base XP. Main guns, all of it was an armor piercing, 103,000 damage. The secondary battery did less than 500, which is not really surprising. And torpedoes did 37,000 damage themselves. Not a lot of targets that were shot at. I mean, we did shoot at 5, but only really effectively damaged the Yamato, the Ibuki, and the Malta. The Minotaur damage was not nearly that much, and we did like 1 or 2 salvos at the Frete de Grosso. So, competitively, this ship is absolute trash. You're not going to be very good compared against any other high-tier cruiser. That being said, as a Japanese cruiser, she's actually really pretty decent. But the main focus on today's video was the torpedoes. So when it came down to it, I wasn't able to land many torpedo hits, but that's not mainly because of the torpedoes themselves. It's just I wasn't in the right situation. My opinion is that if you're going to be using the torpedoes on this ship, you're going to want to have fast torpedoes and powerful torpedoes. So my preference would be the 8km 76 knot torpedoes. The rate of fire is still going to be the same. However, you have a much smaller detectability range for the torpedoes, so they're much more stealthier. And you have a higher flood chance, and you have higher damage. And honestly, that 2.8km buff for the second torpedoes is not going to help you at all. Concealment-wise, I don't have her fully concealed, but it is 10.8km. So as of right now, I cannot stealth torp. However, if you do equip the cruise skill, you have a very limited ability to stealth torp with this cruiser, which honestly, how practical would that be? I mean, there's a ton of aircraft at this tier, and you're going to be sighted by aircraft as well. So that might be the only plus of having those 10.8 kilometer torps, is if you want to be able to stealth torp with her, that will give you the ability to. But regardless, there's no real reason to take the second set of torpedoes. The first set, in my opinion, are so much better. With that, I will stop rambling on about how bad of opinion I have of Ibuki and wrap up today's video. However, tomorrow we'll be going over not an American cruiser, not a French cruiser, but a German cruiser. There's no differences in any of the American cruisers. There's no different guns, no different torpedoes. They're all pretty much the same. And the one French cruiser doesn't have anything to change either, since it's a prison one. But tomorrow we'll be going over Nuremberg. And not necessarily new torpedoes or new guns, but a new hull. We'll be looking at the hull that gives us more torpedoes versus anti-aircraft guns, and we'll see how that works out. So again, thank you for watching and take care.